his daughter might keep some. He wanted 60.
I agree with you. Appreciate it. But you can look, there's no issue, that's question.
Back in the day when we wanted to do stuff.
America. We would have just sat there staring at each other.
I've said, you know, our condemnation is solely for purpose. Can't allow.
Morning, Bob.
It's over for the
Welcome, everybody, to the April 18th Subdivision and Utility Advisory Committee meeting. Opening announcements, please.
Before we begin the agenda, the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. Copies of the agenda for today's meeting, the public hearing procedure, and Planning Department staff reports on all agenda items are available on the counter in the lobby. The Planning Commission's bylaws limit the applicant of a subdivision application and his or her representatives to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing on that item, plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion of that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the Commission may extend these times by a majority vote. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please share your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the room. This will enable staff to notify you if there are any additional proceedings concerning that item. All speakers at the podium, please remove your face mask before speaking into the microphone.
Thank you. Did we have a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Bill Johnson.
Here.
Tony Zimbelman. Bob Duell.
Here.
Jocelyn Klontz.
Here.
Joshua Blick is absent. Bob Aldridge.
Here.
John Williams Bay. Sir, I show 6 members present and 1 absent, and I do not see the alternates.
Thank you. First case is item number 2, vacation case 2024-00016.
Good morning, Subdivision Committee. Philip Zievenbergen with the Planning Staff. Vacation 2416, the applicant is requesting to vacate a portion of an L-shaped alley located on the south side of properties addressed 6601 and 6603 East Kellogg Drive. The purpose of it is to permit the construction of required screening fence across the alley. Go to the aerial image, type in. The applicant owns properties on the north side. They also own this property here. And when we get to the site pictures, you're going to see that historically this has been developed cohesively, and the presence of the alley essentially has gone unnoticed until now, when there's required screening that needs to go across it. It essentially is one large paved parking lot area. This is an interesting case. Can you go to the Eastridge edition plat excerpt? Thank you. So originally, the alley was platted in the Eastridge first edition, or just Eastridge edition, which was an entire quarter section. The properties on the north side that are addressed along Kellogg were not part of the plat. That's this exception here. And I just highlighted the entire alley for you guys to see. Again, they're only looking to vacate this portion of it, but that's where the alley was established. This exception, all of these properties were then individually platted into single lot subdivisions. If you go to the Eastridge second edition plat, later on, Reserve A and Reserve D were replatted into the Eastridge second edition. And as you can see, the alley was noted, but none of these subdivisions currently had identified where the alley came from. So I had to go back and actually found that it was from the Eastridge first edition. We go back to the aerial image. As you can see, the alley has a sewer line in it that will be retained. Public Works and Engineering is requiring a utility easement to cover that. There's also Evergy equipment and Cox equipment in that as well. What's interesting is historical aerial photos show that as this area developed in the 50s and early 60s, that this drive right here essentially became the path of least resistance. Instead of a drive being following the alley, which was never paved, it just kind of came through, and this alley, well, what functions as the alley, goes across private property. With that, though, when the sewer line came in, a easement was dedicated over the sewer line, effectively protecting the drive as well, for the functionality of, getting across, where several of these properties here use the drive as access to parking areas for these quadplexes that are in here. And so, talking with traffic engineering, they do not object to the vacation of the platted alley, as really there's no access in there. Fire doesn't have objection either, essentially because this drive is protected from any buildings because of the easement that is dedicated for the sewer line. If you want to go to the the site pictures at the end, just to give you guys a visual from on the ground of what this looks like. So I'm on the east side of the alley. When I'm looking due east, where you see these power poles, that's the actual platted alley going west, this direction. And you can see this is that drive that serpentines around this property that the applicant owns. So the L-shaped alley goes west and then south and meets this drive on the other side of this building. Next picture. This is just looking kind of a little bit to the southwest of how it kind of functions when related to the residences. And then the last picture shows the access looking east towards Hunter Street. So this is the platted alley going to the east as it gets to Hunter. No property is going to be deprived of access if this is vacated. Again, there's been no objections from property owners. The applicant would be required to dedicate a restrictive covenant binding the vacated alley to the property. All of the property will go to Reserve A to the south because that's the area from which it was dedicated to begin with. All of these single lot subdivisions did not dedicate any of the land for the alley. So effectively it will run with Reserve A, even though the applicant owns property on the other side. That's where the restrictive covenant goes. And again, a dedication of a utility easement to cover the sewer line that is in the platted alley. And with that, I can stand for any questions.
Any questions of staff? Guess not, Philip. Any advisory board members have any comments?
Rondi with Evergy, 4025 North Tobin. We would ask that they maintain the portion with our power poles in it. It's three-phase line, and we just replaced most of those poles in that line as an upgrade, as easement, so that we would have it to be able to maintain our equipment.
Anyone else? Applicant or agent? Give us your name and address.
My name is John Roden, and my address is 3 Hillcrest Avenue, Eastboro, Kansas, 67208. Yeah, we just recently purchased this property in December, and we're looking to put up some fencing around it, and discovered that there was an alleyway back there that we thought had been vacated in the 80s, and it just had never actually functioned as an alley, and so it was kind of a little bit of a surprise to us, and we just want to make sure that the city has everything they need access-wise to get to any sewer lines and like that he just mentioned. So I don't think it functions in any way as an alley at all. It's always that the platted alley doesn't exist as an alley, and I don't think any car would ever drive on it, and has not driven on it for probably 50 to 60 years. So looking back at the historical photos, so just appreciate any help you guys can do.
Do you agree with staff comments? Do you agree with staff comments?
Phillips? Yes.
Thank you. Any questions of the applicant? I guess not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the commission chambers wishing to speak on this item? Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to commission. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve for staff comments.
Got a motion by Mr. Williams Bay, second by Mr. Zimmelman. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? 6-0. Next item is item number 3, which is vacation case 2024-00017.
Again, good morning. Philip Zievenbergen for the record. The applicant is requesting to vacate a 60-foot by 405-foot portion of a platted pipeline easement on property zone rural residential. This property is located 950 feet east of North 247th Street West and a half mile south of West 53rd Street North. The purpose of this is the applicant has been in contact with the pipeline company. The pipeline is abandoned and they're currently not using it. The purpose of the vacation is to simply take the easement demarcation off the plat. They've been working with MABCD downstairs with getting a building permit for an accessory structure. They do intend to keep the easement that was recorded separately. The easement was recorded first, and then when the property was platted, they noted the easement on the plat, and that seems to be the hang-up. The applicant, my understanding is that they've been working with the pipeline company. They don't want to get rid of the easement over across the property, but they are willing to provide a encroachment agreement into the easement by separate instrument. This is simply vacating it off of the face of the plat so that they can obtain a building permit. The easement is going to be retained per the request of the pipeline company, but again, they've been working with them on obtaining an encroachment agreement, and I'll defer to the agent on the specifics of that. So essentially, again, the easement was marked on the plat after the property is platted because it existed prior to the plat. They're looking essentially to take it off of the face of the plat in order to obtain the building permit because they have the agreement with the pipeline company for the ability to encroach. Obviously, this is in the county. Sedgwick County Public Works and Fire do not have any objection to it. Evergy and Cox do not have any equipment in there. It's outside of Evergy's territory. I have not heard any public comment regarding this, and I can stand for any questions.
Any questions of staff? Yes, not Philip. How about the advisory board members? Any comments?
Rondi with Evergy, 4025 North Tobin. This is outside Evergy territory and should be serviced by Sedgwick County Rural Electric Co-op.
Thank you. Anybody else? Applicant or agent?
Kirk Miller, K.E. Miller Engineering, 117 East Louis. I'm the agent. We're fine with staff comments. The reason for this is they want to build like a barn and auxiliary structure to the house. And the way the ground falls, the best flat spot they have encroaches into that easement. They've been working with the pipeline company. The pipeline's been abandoned for at least a decade. They pulled all the signs, the poles and everything. So they're working that out with the pipeline as far as getting an encroachment agreement.
Any questions of the agent? Yes, not. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Anybody else present want to speak on this item? Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to commission. What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve for staff recommendations and comments.
Second.
Got a motion by Mr. Aldridge, second by Mr. Dole. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Anybody opposed? 6-0. Item number 4, vacation case 2024-00018.
Again, good morning. Philip Zievenbergen for the record. Vacation 2418 is a request to vacate two things. One is a half-street right-of-way and a platted 40-foot street side setback that runs parallel to Lot 5, Block 4, the Springdale Country Club Estates Edition. This is a vacation in the county. This is south of East Kellogg and east of 143rd. The pink dashed lines on the map are the city limit boundaries, so the property directly to the east is in the city. This subdivision is in the county, and then you have city to the west of that. We go to the aerial image, please. The property owner would like to vacate the half-street right-of-way of South Fairland Drive and the platted 40-foot setback that is adjacent to that right-of-way. When the property to the east was platted, they did not include any additional right-of-way. In fact, they platted access control along the rear of all of these lots, prohibiting them to even have access to South Fairland Drive. And as you can see, South Fairland Drive essentially functions as this property owner's driveway. And it comes down this way, this is right-of-way here, and it terminates in their, right in front of their property now, and it functions as their driveway. Not too far back, the properties south of them vacated their portion of South Fairland Drive and their 40-foot building setback for the enjoyment of their property. A city water line does go through here. I have worked with both city and county public works since it's basically functioning within both. An easement was dedicated for this water line. An easement would be required to be dedicated if it's approved for this water line as well. There would be no real need for an access easement just because if it's vacated, it only will cut off here. This remains right of way, providing this property owner access to their property. And then essentially this portion of South Fairland Drive becomes their driveway as a private drive. So no need for any type of access agreement or anything because they still have access to the property from Twin Lakes Drive through this portion of the right of way that is still being retained. I have not heard any, I had one phone call for the gentleman to the east. They were part of the notification. He essentially just had a question of what it actually meant. And so after I explained of what they're doing and how the Fairland Drive is functioning and the fact that the rear of his property line prevents him from having access anyway because of platted access control, he was fine. There was no objection. He was just more of a curious conversation regarding the nature of the request since he got a letter in the mail. I believe Chris Stone with City Public Works and Utilities has some updated comments regarding the city water line. I'll let him explain what those are. And if it is vacated and the 40-foot setback is vacated, then it would retain a 10-yard interior side setback from a zoning perspective along what would be this property line here, which would become the property owner's east property line. Technically, these two could be taken separately, so if there's any conversation of whether or not the right-of-way should go versus setback, they can be taken as separate considerations where if there's any issues with the right-of-way, there could still be a vote to vacate the setback if the committee chooses to do so. And I can stay for any questions.
Any questions of staff? I guess I got a question from legal. Do we need to take it separately?
Kirk Sponson, Deputy County Counselor. It would be my recommendation that you do take them separately, yes.
Okay. So the first one should be vacate the street or the alley be first and then the setback second?
However the committee would like to do it, but they can be separate requests.
Any comments from
Rhonda
staff?
with Evergy, 4025 North Tobin. We don't have anything in the area and we have no comment.
Christopher Stone with the City Water Department. We do object, usually when residential lots vacate right away, they can put up a fence or a gate. And we've got a water line and a water meter within that area, and we need access to both 24/7 emergency access in case a leak occurs. If a leak were to happen within this area and we don't have access to it, and we have to shut the main down, it would affect properties to the south of the intersection you can see here and the property up north. They're all tapped off that same main there. So that's why we object.
Anybody else? Yes, Bob.
So you're fine with this as long as you have gated access?
Usually it's locked and we don't have access to it. I would say no, because a locked gate functions the same as a fence. And we have a lot of issues in town where, in residential areas where right-of-way was vacated, where we had existing mains and services, people put up fences and gates, and we don't have access to that stuff anymore. And so we need to get heavy equipment back there, or just one person to read a water meter, for the monthly bill. So something as simple as that, to something as for a major fix.
I didn't know if there was something you can work out with the property owner, for example, where if it was a locked gate that you could have a key or something or access to get in there. Either that or call before you go to have access out there. Because I know, especially reading the meters now, you can just drive by out in the street and pick them. You don't have to manually go out there and pop open a dome lid anymore.
Yeah, we still need to get in there and do visual checks every once in a while, whether it's a customer initiated a complaint or if it's something that we need to check because the numbers don't match up. We have automatic checks from the billing department that get auto-generated.
Any other comments from the advisory board members? Seeing none, applicant or agent?
Kirk?
Kirk Miller, KE Miller Engineering, 117 East Louis. I'm the agent. We can start out with Chris's questions. Right now, there's no plan to put up a fence. We'd gladly give the easement. They just want the extra yard so they can landscape it, maintain it, that type of thing, have access to it. Want to vacate the setback so they can build closer to what would be the water line easement up there, which I think probably would encompass a good portion of the existing right-of-way. Probably at least half that existing right-of-way, probably up to about where the existing right-of-way is right now, and then to the north, like 15 feet. But there's no plan to gate it or anything like that. They plan on leaving access available for the water department, where they can get in there and do what they need to do with the water line. One of the recommendations, or possible recommendations, more of a question, I guess, condition that is in the report has to do with EMS needing an access. Is there, if they said anything, has anybody said they need, okay. Because we'd prefer not to do that because then you're kind of defeating the purpose. But right now, there's no road or anything in there where EMS would be going through it right now. So I don't know that there'd be any issues in the future either. But what we're looking at is if there is a fence put in, it would probably be right along here, but it wouldn't be cutting off access. It would be just more defining the hedgerow along here where they could come in and protect what's along the back line here. The property owner is here if anybody would like to ask any questions of her. Or you can ask questions of me.
Any questions of the agent? I guess I'm curious to what the water department thinks about what's been said.
I mean, we've had the situation before where one homeowner says, and that's great if they don't want to put up a gate yet, but then the next homeowner comes in and puts up that gate, and then we lose access to our utility. So I still object.
Can we make that a restriction then, that if this is approved, that whether it's the current property owner or future property owner would not be allowed to put a fence up?
Kirk Sponsel, Deputy County Counselor. I'm hoping to get city's input on this, but I'm wondering if a possibility would be based off of what's been raised, if one of the conditions could be added, that there be an access easement granted for water with part of that access easement requiring that there be an opening in the fence. Would that satisfy the concerns?
An opening in the fence. So if you put one up. So that they could get to the water line is what they're, okay.
Or prohibit putting up a fence in the area?
That would only prohibit if somebody pulls a permit, or how would that work?
So an access easement would be filed in association with the property. It would run with the land. I mean, that would give rights and duties for them not to put up a fence at that time.
Possibly, is there any way we could defer it to talk about it and possibly come up with an agreement with that?
I don't know if we need to defer it, but I would definitely recommend that things be worked out on there. I guess going back to legal, would that be something that legal would recommend a deferral on that, or just, is there enough time where we can just pause this, go to our next case, and then maybe come back? Would that be enough time? Or you're looking at a significant length of time to think about it?
This will come up next week in full planning commission. Would that give us enough time to check this out? And then if it's not worked out, we can vote differently next week.
So Kirk Sponsel, Deputy County Counselor, in terms of whether or not to proceed with this or defer it at this juncture, I would point out that part of the considerations of this are whether or not the public would suffer loss or inconvenience by the vacation. So in my eyes, this is a very important issue. This might be potentially a sticking point. And so I think preference might be that this get resolved here rather than it being passed down the road, at which time there still may be issues and people will be reacting in the moment.
Mr. Williams Bay.
Would the owner be acceptable to less than the 40-foot easement? So we could get access to the water line?
I guess my opinion is we're either gonna defer it or we're gonna try to come up with some kind of solution.
Kim,
Here's the
Kim.
water meter,
Kim.
like right here.
You gotta come
Over
over.
here.
Okay.
Give us your
And
name
show
and
it.
address too, please.
You can point to it on here.
Okay.
You need to give your name and address.
I'm Kimberly Bays. I am co-owner of the house. My husband's Scott Bays. He started this process in the 90s and we just didn't follow through. We had children. So the water meter is right here. And this is the road and this is our parking pad. At one time we thought, we might put a garage out here. We don't really know. The issue right now is that since this is fair land, people on this side, all the way up and down, will treat the hedgerow as their property, and so they'll clear it out, they'll have walkways through to our yard. Not these people, they're wonderful neighbors, but we don't know who we'll have next. And if you go south, you actually see huge sections of the hedgerow just taken out. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. So if that helps your question, we would like to have more distance here to be able to do some building. We're building a patio right here that's on the correct area. But we just don't want them encroaching on what should be the Springdale Lakes Homeowners Association property, which is Fairland Street. This is turned here into like a little storage area, trash area, wheelbarrows, wood pile, just kind of junky stuff. And it's our house's front yard. So we would just like to have some pretty something there to kind of hide it
So you're talking
and have
about
some
running a
protection.
fence along there.
So I don't know that we'll ever put a full fence because we lived through the 91 tornado. And so we're not a real big fond of privacy fences during a tornado. The hedgerow literally does a good job of screening as long as it stays there, if you understand me. Does that make sense? So what we just want to do here is just a little pretty to protect that
Keep people
storage
from
area.
passing through.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
you said something I just want to ask a question on.
Okay.
Do you own the property or does the HOA own the property?
Well,
It's a street right away.
yeah.
Okay.
I know that it hasn't been an issue for them, and if you go further north, this property up here is vacated theirs, and the property further north, and then two more to the north. So it's all been vacated, and pretty much we're the last ones that doesn't need a road there, so that we can protect our hedgerow. Does that
Thank you.
make sense?
Can we put a restriction in the easement about fencing? Would that work?
Well, there'll always be access to the water line.
But that's for you, but if the future owner is what they're concerned about. So if we put a restriction in the easement about fencing and access and that type of thing, and then you would have that document where if the future owner comes in and puts a fence in, you say, I got this, you got to tear it out. And then you have your access in the future.
And Kirk Sponson, Deputy County Councilor, I think that was raised previously. Just for the record, I believe it was the request of City Water that be deferred for more time to work on the language and consideration. Is that correct?
Possibly, yeah, yeah.
Okay, anything else?
If you have any questions.
Any questions, Agent? Thank you. Anybody else here wanting to speak on this item? Anybody else? Seeing none, bring it back to commission. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'm inclined to make a motion that we approve, I guess we need, two separate motions. One, vacation of the easement. Now before I do that, I got a question. If we put restriction on there as far as no fence, would that come under the easement portion or would that come under the setback portion?
It would be under the right-of-way portion,
The right of way.
Okay,
because the setback is on their property, and they can fence around their property right now. So even with their setback, they can fence up to the right-of-way line as it is, whether or not the setback's there. Any restriction on no fencing would have to fall under the vacation of the right-of-way.
I make a motion that we approve the easement right away, along with an additional comment or restriction with no fence would be allowed on the property now or in the future, as far as the easement right away.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And that's on the vacating the street right away.
Yes.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Passes 6-0. Now let's go to the setback. Vacation.
I guess I'll make the motion again, that we approve the requested setback.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a motion to vacate the setback, and by Mr. Aldridge, second by Mr. Dole. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? 6-0. Item number 5, which is subdivision 2024-00015.
Good morning, Greg Sharon, planning staff, here to present the Falcon Falls East 3rd Edition. Next screen, please. This is a one-step final plat for a 61-lot residential subdivision located within the city. This is a replat of a portion of the Falcon Falls East 2nd Edition, and a zone change to PUD has been approved from the original zoning of TF3 two-family residential and MF18 multifamily residential. Next screen, please. And then the next screen. Go through staff comments. Item A, Public Works and Utilities requires water and sewer to be extended for all lots. Transmission acquisition fees are owned, and a 12-inch water line will have to be extended so that no more than 6 fire hydrants are on a non-looped 8-inch water line. Item C, Stormwater Management advises applicant needs to submit a drainage plan. Item D, Traffic Engineering has approved. I just got word that they have approved access controls. The plat denotes one street opening along Hillside Avenue. Item G, City Fire request proper hydrant locations and requires development of 1 and 2 family dwellings where a number of dwelling units exceeds 30 shall provide 2 separate and approved fire apparatus access roads. Item K, GIS has approved of street names. Item Q, this is within the bicycle plan does indicate a bike pedestrian use path running through this, and that was in reserved A, and easement will be created within this reserve for that bike path, which will connect to the portion to the north. So that access easement has been provided for the bicycle path. Item R, applicant has platted a 20-foot front setback for all lots and a 15-foot building setback along Fairmont Avenue for lots 1, 14, and 15, Block D, and all other setbacks will be per Falcon Falls East PUD. And item BB, Evergy will need to request additional easements, and those have been forwarded to the agent. I can stand for questions.
Any questions, staff? How about the advisory board members? Any comments?
Rondi with Evergy, no additional comment.
Lee Carmichael, Traffic Engineering. We'll also require traffic calming elements along Vassar and Fairmont.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mark Hall, City Stormwater, the drainage plan has been approved.
Oh, okay. Anybody else? Applicant or agent?
Chris Rose with Boffman Company, agent for the applicant. The applicant agrees with staff comments. I will add that I did miss one easement that I need to put on the plat. We need to serve this lot 10 here, so I need an easement right here to extend sewer over to there. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions of the agent? Mr. Aldridge.
Chris, on the second access control, I know we've had this, what, is there gonna be access, future access down on Vassar Avenue, to the south of this for the, Calvary Baptist Church?
Well, we've dedicated as public right of way. They can use it if they choose to. Hoping one day that that piece is unplatted, that if they do go and build or do something in there that requires platting, that they would extend some sort of right of way as far over as they can. But as you can see that there's a cul-de-sac here, so it might limit something, but I know the church does own, I think, they own south of that cul-de-sac, somewhere in there. Maybe they could get access across there, thank you. So they own that, and I believe all of that, so maybe they could get access across there so that they would link, they could connect all of that for a second point of access. And then we also have, Kite Street up here for this unplatted piece of property in the future too.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else present want to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll move for approval with staff recommendations.
Got a motion to approve by Mr. Zimmerman, second by Mr. Williams Bay. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Passes 6-0. Anything else? We're adjourned.